She abandoned her 5-year-old son in the mountains. 10 years later, she came back smiling. I still remember the call. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. A stranger's voice, panicked, said there was a little boy alone by the firs, crying so hard he could barely breathe. In that instant I knew. It was my nephew. My sister-in-law had left him there. Left him. Her own child. 5 years old, clutching a small stuffed fox like it could protect him from the wind. The sky felt too big around him, the path too empty, the world suddenly crueler than it had any right to be. We drove like the road owed us a miracle. My husband's jaw was clenched. Mine trembled. Switchbacks blurred into each other, gravel skittered under the tires, the guardrail flashed and vanished. No one spoke. Family doesn't do this, I kept thinking. Family doesn't throw a child away. We found him under a pine, knees to his chest, little knuckles white around the toy. When he saw us, he flinched. He had already learned that footsteps could mean danger or abandonment. I dropped to my knees. He was cold, shaking, eyes swollen and red. "Where's Mommy?" he whispered. The word cracked like thin ice. I wrapped my coat around him and lied the gentlest lie I could find. That he was safe now, that we were here, that we would not leave. On the ride down, he watched the door like it might open by itself and suck him into the dark. Every curve made him seize my sleeve. I hummed an off-key lullaby from my own childhood and felt the sound break in my throat. At home I made a nest on the couch, warm socks, a soft blanket, hot broth he barely touched. He slept in bursts, waking wild with fear, clutching my wrist until the panic passed. I counted his breaths and memorized the shape of his small hand in mine. By morning I had a decision I could feel in my bones. If she never came back, he would never be alone again. I would be the one to show up. I would be the one to stay. We filed the report. We answered questions. We wrote down times and places. The facts were simple, but the ache behind them was a canyon. I could feel the echo in him when he asked again, softer now, if Mommy knew where he was. I told him the only honest thing I had. I didn't know. I only knew that we would not leave. I only knew that love is a promise made in the ordinary hours, not a performance that disappears when the lights go out. That first week he learned our house. The night light glow. The kettle whistle. The way I would always come when he called. He began to trust the rhythm of footsteps that returned, the door that closed softly, the hand that reached back for his. Grief is loud at first, then it hums under everything. He played, he drew, he laughed in quick flashes, then he folded back into silence. I stayed near and let his sadness exist without trying to rush it away. People asked how a mother could leave like that. I did not answer. I only tucked him in and kissed his hair and told the truth our days were teaching us, that blood is a map, not a contract, that family is carried by the ones who carry you. He survived. Scarred, yes, but breathing, growing. Every night I repeated the same quiet vow into the dark. You are not unwanted, you are not forgotten, you will never be left behind again. I meant every word. I still do. The night before his first day of kindergarten, I labeled notebooks, stitched his name into a backpack, and cried in the laundry room so he would not see. Strength, I learned, is soft and ordinary. Warm mittens in a pocket, steady voice at bedtime, chair pulled close during storms. Always here. The nights after she left were the worst. He would bolt upright, sweating, small fists hammering the sheets, that terrified cry split between breath and sob. I learned the route from bed to his room in the dark. I learned how to wrap both arms around a storm and wait it out. He asked the same question for months. When is Mommy coming back? I built gentle answers out of air and hope, because the truth would break him. Maybe soon. Maybe later. Maybe she is far away, my love. Each lie tasted like metal on my tongue. At kindergarten drop-off he scanned the sidewalk, eyes jumping from face to face. Every woman with dark hair made him flinch with longing. Every disappointment folded him smaller. I walked backward down the path so he could keep me in view, so he could learn that someone would stay. We collected tiny victories. A finger-painted sun hung on the fridge. A full night's sleep. A scraped knee he brought to me without shame. I packed lunches with notes that said I love you in crooked hearts. We learned the names of stars and the schedules of buses and how to make soup from almost nothing. On his 6th birthday we lit candles and sang too loud. After he blew the flames to smoke, he leaned close and whispered, "Did Mommy forget?" My smile held. My chest didn't. I said she could never forget him. It was the last time I used that sentence. He grew, as children insist on doing. By 8 he laughed more, ran faster, trusted the calendar. He drew our family as 3 stick figures with ridiculous hair and labeled them with care. He gave me a name I wore like armor, Mom. Still, some nights I found him by the window, chin on the sill, waiting for headlights. I let the quiet stretch beside him, then said the only promise I could keep: whatever happens, we choose each other tomorrow. There were school conferences and ear infections and shoes that never fit for long. There were field days where he flew down the lane, red-cheeked and grinning, and I clapped until my palms stung. There were Saturdays when we made pancakes shaped like mountains, then ate them with syrup rivers and pretended to rescue gummy bear hikers from powdered sugar snow. Grief changed texture. It stopped slicing and started tugging, a dull ache under ordinary laughter. He learned to carry it without letting it carry him. I learned to let joy touch the same places sorrow had lived. By 10 he begged for a real soccer tournament. We drove before dawn, him drowsy in the passenger seat, my thermos scalding my hands awake. He scored, missed, scored again, then sprinted to me with that wild, astonished grin that belongs only to children who have survived something. We built traditions to replace the empty ones. First day photos on the porch. Hot cocoa after bad days. A standing rule that the person who felt smallest chose the movie. He started to sleep through storms. I started to believe we had outrun them. Time softened the edges, but scars do not vanish. Sometimes a certain perfume in a grocery aisle tainted his throat with old fear. Sometimes the word mother did, too. I didn't push. I let him name what hurt. I let him trust the pace of his own healing. And still, life went on. Homework on the table, cleats muddy by the door, laughter echoing down the hallway that once held only whispers. We planted a sapling in the yard and marked his height against the fence every season. The shadow never disappeared, but it stopped leading. It followed us instead. And just as our days felt ordinary, the past rounded the corner and found us. And just when life finally began to feel normal, she came back. For real. She arrived with a thin smile and borrowed confidence. 10 years gone, and she walked up like she'd only stepped out for milk. She knocked, lifted her chin, and said the sentence she knew would wound us both: "I'm his mother." My nephew stood behind me, taller now, shoulders squared by years of healing. I felt him go still, the way deer freeze when brush rustles. She tried to sweep him into an embrace. He shifted back, putting my shoulder between them. Her mouth faltered, then curved again, sugary and false. The gifts came next: bright shoes, a phone he hadn't asked for, a drone he didn't want. Pet names pasted over sentences that never once acknowledged the night she left him in the cold. She called herself brave and me possessive. Word spread fast. At the market she told anyone who'd listened that I had poisoned him and blocked her calls, that she'd spent years fighting to return. Neighbors shifted, unsure where the truth lived. At home, my nephew watched me the way drowning people watch the horizon. "Do we have to see her?" he asked, voice flat. I told him the same thing I told him when he was small. He gets to choose what hurt touches his life. He nodded, grateful and wary. She didn't stop. She waited by the school gate, waving like she was picking him up from a sleepover and not from the middle of the childhood she abandoned. He kept his distance, thanked her, left the gifts on our porch. The fox he once clutched slept on his shelf. The drone stayed in its box. One evening she cornered me by our mailbox and hissed that I had stolen him. The word snapped something I'd been holding together with thin thread. Stolen. I didn't steal a child. I lifted him from the place she dropped him and carried him forward until his own legs could bear the weight. The fury that rose in me was clean and bright. Protecting him wasn't enough. I needed to protect the truth. I pulled the old file, the report from that winter afternoon, the times, the statements. I called the neighbor who'd seen the car drive away. I made copies. I asked our lawyer what came next. At dinner, I told my nephew the plan. He set down his fork and said he wanted to speak for himself. "I don't want to be the sad little kid anymore," he said. "I want to be the one who remembers everything clearly." Determination tightened his jaw. Pride and fear tightened my throat. The next time she arrived with a camera-ready smile, I didn't step aside. I told her that family is more than blood. It's 1,000 small choices to stay. I told her she forfeited the title when she abandoned the job. She laughed and said a court would never believe me. I almost pitied her certainty. Almost. Because I had what she didn't, time and truth woven into a life actually lived. And I had a young man who knew exactly who showed up for him, and who did not. That's when I understood, this wasn't only about protecting him. It was about ending the story she kept selling and replacing it with the one he survived. It was about exposure, not endurance. That's when I realized this wasn't just about protecting him, it was about exposing her. Truth has a weight to it. I stacked it piece by piece until it could not be ignored. First, the paper trail. The report from the winter afternoon a stranger called about a crying boy alone among dark trees. The intake notes, the times and names. I highlighted the lines that mattered. We added photographs from that week. Tiny hands around a fox, red eyes, the blanket he would not release. Then the witnesses. The neighbor who saw her car idling before it slipped down the road without him. The ranger who logged the call. The nurse who checked him for frostbite. Their memories did not blur. They sharpened under the question every decent person asked. How could a mother leave? Finally, his voice. He was older now, taller than me, but when he spoke about that day his words were clean, measured, steady. He did not dramatize or curse. He told the truth like he had practiced breathing it. I hated asking him to reopen old wounds. He hated seeing me carry the burden alone. We met in the middle. If the past had to be lifted, we would lift it together. When she showed up again, I met her at the gate. She tossed her hair like a banner and asked if I was finished playing house. I told her I was finished playing at all. I handed her copies of the records and the witness list. Her smirk flickered. "You think paper makes you family," she said. "He is mine." "He is himself," I said. "And family is what you do, not what you say." The words between us heated the air. She sneered that I wanted to be a mother so badly I had stolen one. I told her I had stayed so stubbornly that a boy became a man with his head high and his heart intact. We were done pretending. From the porch, he stepped forward. He had been listening, jaw tight. "Stop," he said, not loud but absolute. "You don't get to talk about her like that." He turned to me. "You don't have to keep defending this. I know who raised me." He faced her then. "I remember," he said. "I remember the cold. I remember waiting. I remember deciding she wasn't coming. And I remember who did." He tapped his chest once like he was fastening something inside. "I'm not confused." She tried to laugh and failed. She tried to cry and couldn't. Without an audience, her performance fell flat. She hissed that a judge would see through me and that biology always wins. "Then let's go where truth is recorded," I said. "We'll let the record speak." I called our lawyer that night and sent scanned files until the screen blurred. Our kitchen turned into a command center. Folders, timelines, a pen between my teeth, his hand steady on my shoulder every time doubt tried to sneak in. The next week we filed. She wanted a stage. We gave her a courtroom. She wanted a story. We brought receipts. It was enough. I slept like people sleep before storms, briefly, and with my shoes at the door. But fear no longer led me. It sat in the back seat while purpose drove. But the final blow came in court. Court felt colder than winter. Not the room, the eyes, the hush, the way words echoed like something dropped down a well. She arrived costumed for sympathy, clutching tissues she didn't need, chin tilted just enough to suggest sorrow without surrender. Her lawyer called her a mother kept away by hardship, ready now to rebuild. The story slid across the benches like perfume, masking the rot. Then came the record, the ranger's log, the report, the neighbor's affidavit, the nurse's notes. We didn't embellish. We set pieces where they belonged and let them form their own picture. When my nephew took the stand, my hand shook, but he didn't. He spoke low and clear. He remembered the cold and the waiting, the moment he decided she wasn't coming, and the years someone else did. He looked at me. She tried to object, then snapped that I had poisoned him. The judge raised a hand. The performance cracked. Without the town as audience, the act lost its shine. Our lawyer asked one question that mattered. What do you need to feel safe? My nephew faced the bench. To stay where love has already stayed, he said. To keep my life. Silence settled like snow. 10 years folded back on themselves. The nightlight glow, the kettle whistle, the fox asleep on a shelf, the first time he called me Mom. Ordinary acts that stitched him together lined up like lanterns. The judge didn't take long. Guardianship remained with me. Her petition was denied. She was advised to seek counseling before any future contact. The gavel's soft knock sounded like a door finally closing. We stepped into the hallway, and the air felt different. My nephew took my hand, not as the child from the mountain's shadow, but as a young man who knew where he belonged. She passed us on her way out, eyes flat, the tissues now crumpled for real. For a second I searched her face for remorse. None came. Outside, winter light struck the courthouse steps. We stood there breathing. He leaned his shoulder into mine the way he used to, except now he didn't need to, he just wanted to. I thought about her lie, that I stole him. The truth is simpler. I stayed. Through ordinary days and broken ones. Through homework and stitches and birthdays and midnight talks. We walked to the car. I unlocked his door, an old reflex I'll never unlearn. He laughed and opened it himself. "I've got it," he said. Of course he did. The case was over, but what mattered had started years earlier at our kitchen table, in the small, stubborn rituals of staying. That is where love did its quiet work, and where he healed. In the end, I didn't just save him from her. I saved him from ever doubting his worth again.